Time for us to look at and analyze what was said in the weekly press conference with Coach Harsin. Obviously, a lot of questions remain about the Penn State game, but there is some focus, especially from Coach Harsin, about the team that is ahead for them in Georgia State. Let's talk about what he said and what he was asked in this press conference. My name is Kyle, the owner and editor of the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. Our content here and on our podcast network may tend to be Auburn sports heavy, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you never miss any content. Thank you to members of our booster club like Kevin Nelson, who help produce videos like this. As always, I want to encourage you to go watch the press conference in full if you have the time to. You can find that on Auburn football social media accounts, but there are many other media people out there who put it up for you, and you can check out all the questions and all the answers from Coach Harsin in the full context. So this is just my takeaways, my analysis of what was asked and what was said in a shortened version for you in case you don't have the time right now or ever to go and watch the press conference yourself. I do want to stress some overall themes from it at the start. First of all, very complimentary of Penn State. And you would hope that your coach would be classy and professional, and he was. And I think this is something that Auburn fans should take away from this. Auburn lost to a very good, not a great, but a very good Penn State team. We'll find out how great they're going to be as the season goes on. Same for Auburn. But they lost to a great team. Coach Harsin stressed that. And I think Auburn fans really need to take solace in that. And I'm not talking about moral victories. I'm just talking about losing to a quality opponent on their home turf. He also did a lot of dispelling of rumors and hearsay all over social media and from the media personalities about questions about whether they were not prepared or were players making the right choices and decision. He stressed they had a game plan and they were prepared for those moments. It just didn't go their way. And honestly, in reality, that's kind of what happens sometimes, especially when you're playing a great opponent. And also some stressing that we need to stop focusing so much on the what ifs of Penn State. Not that you shouldn't learn from it, take stuff from it, and apply it to next week, but you really need to focus on the next week, Georgia State, because we got to beat them to get through the rest of the season. With that, let's go a little bit deeper in some of the questions and things that were asked of him and his responses. Something I found interesting off the top: no players of the game for him with a loss. He says that's what he traditionally does. If you lose, no players of the game. But it says there are some people that really stood out, and we'll talk about some of those when they were asked about it by some of the reporters. In a funny way and not intentional way, he kind of called out Tennessee for losing to Georgia State. And it was, I found it kind of comical that he probably didn't intend it that way, but I kind of took it like that and had a little chuckle with it. So there you go. Tennessee lost to Georgia State if you forgot about that. And talked about, obviously, players to watch for them. I won't go into some of those, but you can kind of look those up yourself. He wants us to focus on things that worked currently and previously and return to those, especially discipline. Emphasizing things that are important, not worrying so much, kind of thinking back to 2 games ago with that weird onside kick, not worrying so much about that, yet finding some time to prepare for those things. One of the things he was asked was, do you like the run-pass balance that was presented in the game? Always trying to be balanced is what he said. The O-line continues to show a little bit of promise in this area and what they were providing, especially with good red zone running, which is kind of ironic with the choice in the end zone. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. He acknowledged there is a need to build the pass more off of the run game. There's a learning curve to all of this, and we took that away from this game, and I think they'll probably utilize that going forward. He was asked about the high pass completion by the opponents, especially Penn State. Talked about needing better zone coverage, so a lot of you that have been analyzing the zone coverage, there's your acknowledgement of that. But really, it comes down to it, gotta have a better pass rush to go along with it. So he acknowledged both parts of that, and hopefully that's 2 areas they're gonna really work on a defensive front. He's also asked about the vertical passing game assessment, and they say they assess it no matter what the outcome is, win or loss, every single time. It's not just because it looked bad in this game that they're gonna really assess it this time. Big plays were not there, and he acknowledged that. But to get to those plays and make them more available to themselves, you got to work on the fundamentals to build up to that. They acknowledge that you got to have those big plays to really make a difference. He's also asked about if we're just seeing growing pains on defense, especially when it comes to pass coverage. And there was really, this is kind of the funniest moment, he just kind of flat out said no, because that assumes that we're not preparing for that and working really hard on those type of things. But he did acknowledge that they did not execute. And really, that's what this amounts to. It's not that they didn't prepare. it all comes down to execution. I think a lot of fans miss that sometimes, that you can prepare and prepare and prepare, but if you don't execute, what was the preparation for? You got to execute when the game is on the line. He also said that big plays will happen, and they as a team have to adjust better to those. Update on Owen Pepo. Didn't really go into a lot of detail, but said that he is doing well and that we're going to reassess this Tuesday on how many reps he will get in practice. So obviously the injury wasn't too bad, that they're already planning on trying to figure out how many reps they can get him. I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that we'll probably see him in the Georgia State game, just on a limited basis to make sure that's not tweaked further, but he doesn't get further behind in his progression this season. More questions about the pass rush. He's again here said that Penn State showed up. You got to give credit to them. They were a good team, and they were prepared for Auburn on their home turf, which you hope they would be. The one thing that I found interesting is that you acknowledge you can't allow 8 to 9 seconds back there for the quarterback, which I honestly didn't even think to clock how long Clifford had sometimes in these games. And if you think about it, he probably did have 8 or 9 seconds a few times. He was also asked about Bo's performance, and he was very complimentary of Bo, really about his poise, handling the environment himself, within himself. But he also talked about how he handled that and was poised when it came to things like his checkdowns, his lineups of the team. The thing that everybody keeps missing on all this when it comes to Bo is Bo can do everything right, but if he doesn't get the support around him, it's not going to help or work. And he stressed that again in this. Got to have the guys rally around him. Of course, we were asked about the 4th down call, and I even underlined this in my notes. He said we planned for that, and he didn't say he approved it, but it basically said as much that I approved of that. That was planned. It was not some stupid call that Bobo made from the booth by himself. This was planned and accounted for by the staff themselves, and it just didn't work. Credit goes to Penn State. Also talked about Kobe Hudson and his response after his huge mistake at the beginning of the second half. Really liked what he saw in his response and getting back out there and trying to make up for the deficit that he had put Auburn in just with the mistake he had made. But he also saw a lot of other guys respond in really big ways to other adverse situations that happened throughout the game. He was asked about moving Mason to the box because of the pace issues that we were seeing with the defense responding to how fast the offense was moving for Penn State. An emphatic no, and he even said this has nothing to do with adjusting to pace. Doesn't sound like he'll be moving much at all. And then you just kind of got your generic, how do you turn this loss into a positive thing? And he kind of expounded a lot on this point and said a bunch of kind of just very overarching things, a few things he said, focusing on discipline, learn to hate losing. Experience from this loss brings a better understanding of where they're at. That's the big thing for me. And I've tried to stress this in a lot of our live streams and things like that. This was the benchmark for the team this year. Where do they stand and where do they need to go? Take what you learned and move on. It's Georgia State week, after all. We got to stop talking about Penn State and the what-ifs and talk about our next opponent. So that's my assessment and just short breakdown of what was said in Coach Harsin's full press conference. Again, go watch it if you would like to hear for yourself what he said and the full questions of what he's asked. But I'd like to hear from you. What did you think about my thoughts? And if you watched it yourself, what you took away from the press conference. If you enjoyed this type of content, please help support it by smashing that like button. If you want more content from us, be sure to hit the subscribe and notification bell so you never miss an upload or a live stream. There are also other ways you can help support us listed in the description, but also check out things like becoming a channel member. You can hit that join button, go into the description links, or up and above in the video right now. $1 a month is all it takes, even only $1 a month to join the Booster Club. Check all those things out. Hope that you can find a way to help support us, even if it's just smashing that like button. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle.